Hello everyone, welcome to It's All About Economics, and today's topic is bar charts and pie charts, which is a part of a paper that is called Statistical Methods from Unit 1A. And I'm Suraj Sharma. For more details, you can email or you can text me. What are the objectives of this particular class is in last class we have gone through what actually frequency distribution is and the different types of frequency distribution. We also gone through the graphical and diagrammatic representation of frequency distributions using ECDFs and histograms and others. In this particular class, we would be focusing on graphical representation of variables using bar charts and pie charts. As we have already done histogram in previous lecture, so for more information, you can go through our previous lecture on frequency distribution. Now, as we know that the frequency tables and these empirical cumulative distribution functions are useful in providing numerical summary of the variables. But alternatively, we can use graphs or plots to summarize variables information, as we have done in previous lecture using histograms and plotting cumulative distribution functions. Simultaneously, it helps in more compact hidden information if we plot it and we summarize data using graphs. It helps in studying one variable or analyzing relationship of two different variables, and so on. For information on histogram and how to plot it, you can see the previous video lecture on frequency distribution, and now we are moving ahead describing the bar charts. So, what does it mean by bar charts? It's a simple tool to visualize nominal or ordinal data that is actually qualitative data. And as long as we have number of categories not very large, then it is very useful. Why we are saying that the number of categories should not be very large is only because if the number of categories is large, then number of bars will also be large, and bar charts will be no more informative. So for precise or for precise information, you should use variables which have lesser number of categories for plotting bar charts. Now it is visualized using a bar chart for each category, and height of that bar may be absolute or relative frequency of that particular category. You can plot bar charts using frequencies on the y-axis and categories on the x-axis, and they should be in your mind that if you're plotting ordinal variables particularly, then you should sort or arrange the data according to their order, values, or ranks, or preferably you can sort it or arrange it in ascending order, so that the bar chart looks like an information, precise information for you. Now, if we see the graphical representation of bar chart, considering an example of our previous lecture, suppose we have 100 graduates employed, and out of these 100 graduates employed, 60 were male and 40 were female. So here we have a variable that is sex, and we have categorized the variables into two different categories, that is male and female. And here we have total sample of graduates employed is 100, that is n. Here absolute frequencies are n1, that is 60, and n2, that is 40. And this bar charts can be plotted using the absolute frequencies. As you can see that we have plotted the bar chart using y-axis as absolute frequencies and x-axis as the categories for sex, that is male and female. And the height of the bar chart, for male, the bar height is actually equal to the absolute frequency. Similarly for females, this is equal to the absolute frequency of female category. Now, if we continue it with the same example, we can also calculate relative frequencies, and we can plot bar charts using relative frequencies. As you can see that here, F1 and F2 are the relative frequencies for male and female, and how these relative frequencies is calculated. We have earlier shown you in the previous lecture that this can be calculated using the formula of Fj is equal to Nj upon N, where Fj is the frequency of jth category, and Nj is the absolute frequency of jth category, and N is total sample. So here, if you want to calculate this for males, then you will have to put absolute frequency of male, then you will divide it by total sample, that is 100, and you will get your relative frequency. And this is how you can plot it. In y-axis you put relative frequency, and in the x-axis you put the variable of your interest here, that is sex, and these are the two different categories. Now for bar charts, if you're plotting ordinal variable, I already mentioned you that you should keep in mind that you should sort your data, or you arrange your data in ascending order. And here we put it that in a particular order. And consider we have an example, previous example of a survey of 21,166 children's health assessment level by parents, reported on a scale of 1 to 11. And you see that we have plotted it using absolute frequency and the relative frequency. um, mm, you know that here the number of categories are comparatively large, so no, that much information is not here visible if we have lesser number of categories. And for that thing, we actually, what we do is we have categorized it in a lesser categories, and you can see that here we have plotted it based on the three categories, that is poor health reported, average health reported, and good health reported, based on the ordinal data, that is from 1 to 11. From 1 to 4 we have put it as poor. From 5 to 8 we have put it as average health, and for good health we have the health assessment of 9 or above. So we may categorize the variables in lesser number of categories, and now you can see that this is more informative than the previous one. And here we have plotted it for the absolute frequency as well as for the relative frequencies. Now moving ahead to pie charts, as you can see that pie charts are the another way to visualize the absolute and relative frequencies, and this can be plotted for nominal and ordinal variables as well. Now this is very different from bar charts, as this pie chart is actually the circular statistical graphics, which is divided into different segments or arcs to illustrate numerical proportions. If you see that this arc length or the angle of each segment is proportional to the quantity it represents. And being a circular graphic, the addition of all angles would obviously be equal to 360-degree. And how you can actually get the arc length or the angle of a particular segment is by this formula, where you can calculate it by using this formula of Nj divided it by N, and multiply it by 360-degree. Here Nj is the absolute frequency of jth category, and N is the total sample. It is very important to mention that the area of a segment is not proportional to the absolute frequency of respective category. Instead, it is proportional to the arc length or the angle. So always keep in your mind that first calculate the arc length or the angle of each segment, then only go for plotting of pie charts. I'm showing you the example, and taking the previous example of 100 graduate samples, out of which 60 were male and 40 were female. Here we have absolute frequency N1 and N2 as 60 and 40, and the arc length can be calculated for male using this formula. We get it as 216 degree. For female, similarly, we get it as 144 degree. And obviously, if you add these two, because we are having only two segments for this particular variable, that is sex, it will add up to 360 degree. And this is the absolute frequency pie chart for a particular variable, that is sex. Continuing, you can also use a second example, that is health assessment of children. And similarly, you can use the absolute frequencies and total number of samples. You can calculate the arc length here, and by using these arc length, you can plot pie chart. It is very important to mention here is that this angle for female is actually 144 degree, and this angle for male is actually 216 degree. So the arc length or the angle are proportional to the absolute frequency here. You should keep this in your mind, that first you calculate the angle, then you plot your pie chart. So thank you so much for being with me. In next class, we would be focusing on measures of central tendency. Thank you so much for your time.